I was switched at birth, and no one did anything wrong. But every choice I've made since has hurt someone who loves me, and I still don't know if I chose the right family. I didn't grow up feeling unloved, neglected, or misunderstood, which is what makes all of this so hard to explain without sounding ungrateful. My childhood was fine. Not perfect, but steady, safe, predictable in the way people mean when they say they had a normal upbringing. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, in a house that always smelled faintly like laundry detergent and coffee. My parents, Karen and Michael Carter, were reliable people, not overly affectionate, not cold either, the kind of parents who showed love through consistency, packed lunches, rides to school, remembering appointments. My mom worked as a high school guidance counselor. She was the kind of person who believed problems could be solved if you talked about them calmly enough. My dad was a commercial insurance underwriter, practical, structured, uncomfortable with big emotions but deeply committed to stability. They loved routines. Dinner around 6, grocery shopping on Saturdays, family holidays done the same way every year. They loved me. I never doubted that. Still, even as a kid, I felt slightly off, not in a dramatic way, just a persistent sense that I was playing a role I hadn't auditioned for. Like I'd wandered into the wrong classroom and decided to stay because no one told me to leave. I was quieter than they were, more inward. My parents were social, comfortable with neighbors and small talk. I preferred being alone with a book or listening to conversations instead of participating. People commented on how I didn't really look like either of them. My mom would smile and say I had her aunt's eyes. My dad would joke that genetics were weird. I accepted those explanations because kids don't question the foundations of their lives unless something forces them to. School came and went. I did fine. Not exceptional, not struggling. I went to college nearby, moved back home for a year to save money, then got a job as a patient intake coordinator at a large outpatient medical clinic. It was steady work, paperwork, schedules, insurance forms, talking to people who were nervous, sick, or overwhelmed, and trying to sound calm even when I wasn't sure what to say. Looking back, there's something unsettling about how fitting that job turned out to be. Life moved forward quietly, predictably, until my mom got sick. At first, it wasn't alarming. She was tired more than usual. Some aches she blamed on stress. Then came the appointments, blood work, scans, a growing pile of paperwork spread across the dining room table. One of her doctors suggested genetic screening. Just to rule things out, he said. Family history, precautionary. He asked if I wanted to be tested too, to complete the picture. None of us hesitated. Why would we? It felt like another form, another checkbox. A few weeks later, my dad asked me to sit down at the kitchen table. That alone should have told me something was wrong. My parents didn't do dramatic sit-down conversations. They avoided emotional confrontations the way some people avoid storms, by pretending they weren't coming. My dad's hands were shaking. My mom stood by the sink, gripping the counter like it was holding her upright. "There's no easy way to say this," my dad said. My first thought was cancer. Then he said, "The test results came back. They double-checked them." He paused, like he was hoping the words might rearrange themselves into something easier. "You're not biologically ours." For a moment, my brain tried to make that mean adoption, a long-held secret, a late confession. That alone felt like my chest collapsing inward. But then he said the word hospital. He told me there had been a documented switch at birth at Riverside Memorial Hospital. 2 babies, 1 mistake. The wrong infant sent home with the wrong parents. No one noticed. Not for decades. I laughed. It came out sharp and strange, like it belonged to someone else. Then I felt sick. My stomach dropped so hard I had to run to the bathroom. I remember gripping the edge of the sink and staring at my reflection, trying to find something familiar in my own face. They told me the hospital had already contacted them. Lawyers were involved. Records had been pulled. The other family had been located. There was another woman out there, my age, raised by my biological parents, living the life that could have been mine. The house felt wrong after that, like the walls had shifted slightly when no one was looking. My parents tried to act normal. My mom cooked my favorite meals. My dad asked about work in that overly casual tone people use when they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. I didn't know what to feel. Shock didn't come all at once. It arrived in waves. Some days I felt detached, like I was watching someone else's life unravel. Other days, the weight of it pressed down so hard I couldn't breathe. Then they told me the other family wanted to meet, and somehow that scared me more than everything else. I spent days convincing myself the first meeting wouldn't matter. I told myself it was just information, a formality. a box to check so everyone could say we tried. That was a lie, and I knew it. We met at a quiet coffee shop halfway between Columbus, Ohio, and Fort Collins, Colorado, neutral territory suggested by lawyers, chosen so no one would feel like they were stepping into someone else's home. I arrived early and sat near the window, watching people come and go, families, couples, strangers with shared mannerisms I suddenly noticed everywhere. Every time the door opened, my chest tightened. Then I saw them. I knew immediately. Not because I'd memorized photos or because someone waved. I just knew. There's no poetic way to explain it without sounding dramatic, but my body recognized them before my brain caught up. Laura Bennett walked in first. She was shorter than I expected, with the same nose I see in the mirror every morning. Her eyes scanned the room frantically until they landed on me, and then she stopped like she'd run into a wall. She started crying before she even reached the table. "I'm sorry," she said over and over, pulling napkins from her bag she didn't end up using. Behind her was David Bennett, carrying himself carefully, like every movement required thought. He looked at me the way someone looks at a photograph they've studied too long. Familiar but unreal. This is Emily," he said, mostly to himself. We sat down. No one knew where to put their hands. Laura kept apologizing, even though none of it was her fault. She told me she'd replayed the day of my birth in her head 1,000 times. David nodded along, his jaw tight, like if he opened his mouth too much, he might lose control. They told me about their life in Fort Collins, about their kids, my siblings. Ryan, the oldest, confident, talkative, the kind of person who fills a room without trying. Claire, younger than me, gentle, curious, studying to work in healthcare, which made something in my chest twist in a way I didn't understand yet. They showed me pictures, family holidays, group selfies, a Christmas photo where everyone leaned into each other naturally. I stared too long at a picture of Ryan laughing. He laughed the same way I do. It wasn't just physical resemblance. It was posture, expression, the way his mouth tilted slightly to one side. Something shifted inside me, not dramatically, just a quiet click, and I hated myself for noticing. When Laura reached across the table and touched my hand, it didn't feel intrusive. It felt expected, like a gesture that had been delayed for years. "We never stopped thinking about you," she said. I nodded, even though I didn't know how to respond to that. How do you acknowledge a love that existed without you? Afterward, in the car, I sat in silence for a long time before starting the engine. I told myself I was overwhelmed, that anyone would be, but deep down, I knew the truth was more dangerous than that. I felt something I hadn't felt growing up. I felt recognized. The next few weeks were a blur of cautious contact. Text messages at first, short calls, coffee again, then dinner. Each interaction felt oddly easy. Conversation flowed without effort. There were shared mannerisms I kept noticing, phrases, reactions, small habits that mirrored my own. At the same time, home felt heavier. My parents, Karen and Michael, tried so hard not to show their fear that it seeped into everything. My mom started saying things like, "You're still our daughter," more often. Like repetition could anchor reality. My dad asked careful questions about the Bennetts, then immediately followed them with reassurance. "We're happy you're learning about them. We just want you to be okay." But something had already changed. I started feeling like a guest in my own house, not unwelcome, just temporary, like I was occupying space meant for someone else. When I visited the Bennetts again, Laura cooked dinner like she'd been doing it for me my whole life. David watched me closely, memorizing the way I spoke, the way I reacted, like he was afraid to miss anything. And every time I left, the guilt followed me home. I started lying about small things, saying I was busy when I wasn't, saying I had work when I just needed space. That was the first real choice I made, distance. The first real test came with Thanksgiving. I hadn't planned for it to matter. I told myself it was just a day on a calendar, but everyone else treated it like a verdict waiting to be handed down. My mom brought it up weeks in advance, casual at first. "So what are you doing for Thanksgiving this year?" she asked one evening while drying dishes. I said I wasn't sure yet. That was true, technically. A few days later, Laura Bennett asked me the same question, but her voice carried something fragile beneath the words. "We'd love to have you," she said. "No pressure, just if you want." I felt like I was standing in the middle of a room while two walls slowly moved closer together. I said yes to Laura before I said anything to my parents. That alone felt like a betrayal. When I finally told my mom, she stared at me for a long moment, like she was trying to translate what I'd just said into something survivable. "So that's it?" she asked quietly. "You're replacing us?" "No," I said immediately, because that was the answer I was supposed to give. But I didn't know what else to say after that. She didn't yell. She didn't cry right away either. She just nodded, slowly, like she was absorbing a physical blow. My dad didn't say much at all. He hugged me before I left, holding on just a little longer than usual. Thanksgiving in Fort Collins was loud, warm, chaotic in a way my childhood holidays never were. Ryan talked constantly. Claire asked me questions about my life like she was trying to piece together a version of me she'd missed. Laura hovered between cooking and watching me like she couldn't quite believe I was really there. I fit. That was the problem. When I came home, my parents had saved leftovers for me. My mom asked how the drive was. My dad asked if I'd had a good time. I said yes. It felt like confessing something I wasn't supposed to want. After that, the pattern was set. I split holidays, I shortened visits. I started planning my schedule around what felt easiest emotionally, not what was fair. I didn't stop loving my parents. But loving them started to feel heavier. Every visit came with expectation, with hope, with the unspoken fear that this might be the last time things felt normal. My mom started recreating old traditions, making the same meals, bringing out old photos, telling the same stories. Instead of comfort, it made everything feel fragile, like we were all pretending the past hadn't cracked. I noticed my dad watching me more closely, studying my reactions, measuring distance. One night, after dinner, he asked me a question he'd clearly been holding on to for a while. "Do you wish you'd been raised by them?" I didn't answer. The silence stretched between us, thick and unforgiving. He nodded slowly, like the lack of an answer had told him everything he needed to know. I started spending more time in Fort Collins. At first, I told myself it was convenience. Then honesty stopped being part of the explanation. I moved closer, not far, just enough to make my absence noticeable. My parents never said it out loud, but I could feel the shift. Conversations became careful. Visits felt weighted. My mom started emphasizing the phrase, "our daughter," like it was a spell she needed to keep repeating. And maybe it was. Meanwhile, the Bennetts acted like I'd never been gone. Laura talked about future holidays like they were a given. David asked about my long-term plans. Ryan joked about how long it took me to finally show up. It felt natural in a way that scared me, because preference had crept in. And once it was there, I didn't know how to pretend it wasn't. By the time winter settled in, everyone had stopped pretending this was temporary. The phone calls from my parents became more frequent, but also more strained. Conversations stalled in polite places, like we were all afraid of stepping on the wrong word. My mom started asking questions that sounded harmless on the surface. "Have you talked to them lately? Are you going back there again this weekend?" Each one carried the same unspoken fear. My dad stayed quieter, but when he did speak, it landed heavier. He started bringing up logistics, holidays, schedules, balance. He said the word like it was a solution instead of a compromise no one wanted. Then came therapy. My mom suggested it first. Family counseling, joint sessions. "Just to help everyone process," she said, in the calm professional tone she used with students. The Bennetts were open to it immediately. "We'll do whatever helps," Laura said. "We don't want to make this harder for anyone." I nodded along. I even said yes. But something in my chest tightened when the word blending started being used. Blended holidays, blended traditions. One long table where everyone pretended this was just an unusual family story, instead of a fracture that couldn't be smoothed over. The idea made me feel tired in a way sleep didn't fix. The therapist's office was neutral. Beige walls, soft lighting, a couch that tried too hard to be comfortable. Seeing both sets of parents in the same room was surreal. My mom sat stiffly. Laura cried almost immediately. My dad folded his hands together. David leaned back, watching everyone carefully. The therapist asked gentle questions. How did we feel? What did we want? Everyone looked at me. That was when I realized something uncomfortable. I didn't want two families. I wanted one life that made sense. And that desire made me feel cruel. After the session, my mom hugged me tightly. "We'll figure this out," she said, like reassurance could force a solution into existence. Later that night, my dad called. "I just need to know something," he said, "and you don't have to answer if you're not ready." I already knew what he was going to ask. "Do you feel more like their daughter than ours?" I closed my eyes. The honest answer hovered on my tongue, sharp and unforgiving. "I don't know," I said. That was another lie. Distance kept growing, even when no one acknowledged it. I spent more weekends in Fort Collins. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped apologizing every time I left. At some point, guilt started turning into resentment. Not at my parents, but at the situation, at the expectation that I could carry everyone's pain without cracking. I started wondering if honesty was just another form of selfishness. The breaking point didn't come during a fight. It came during a perfectly ordinary phone call. My mom was telling me about a student who'd been accepted into college. She sounded proud, calm, normal in the way she used to sound all the time. Then she paused. "You know," she said carefully, "your father and I were talking. We were wondering if you'd want to spend Christmas here this year. All of it." The word all landed heavier than anything else she'd said. I stared at my wall while my chest tightened. I had already told the Bennetts I'd be there. "I don't think I can," I said. There was a long silence. "Okay," she finally said. "That's okay." But her voice wasn't okay. Later that night, my dad called. "I just need to understand," he said. "Are we losing you?" I opened my mouth to reassure him, to soften it, to say something that would make the hurt manageable. Instead, the truth slipped out. "I don't feel like I belong the same way anymore." The words hung between us. He didn't argue. "I see," he said quietly. After that, things shifted for good. Visits became infrequent. Conversations felt formal. My mom still tried to sound upbeat, but it felt like she was performing for me now. When I spent Christmas in Fort Collins, Laura cried again. Ryan hugged me like I'd always been there. Claire gave me a small, knowing smile, like she understood more than she said. It was warm, familiar, easy, and the ease scared me, because ease meant choice. Weeks later, my mom asked if we could meet. Just the two of us. We sat in a quiet cafe near her house. She stirred her coffee long after it had gone cold. "I need to know," she said, "if there had never been a test, would this still have happened?" I thought about it, about the years I'd felt slightly out of place without knowing why. "I don't know," I said honestly. She nodded, but her eyes filled anyway. "I loved you every day," she said. "I hope you know that." "I do," I said, and that was the problem. Love wasn't the issue. I left feeling like I'd closed a door I couldn't reopen. It's been a year since everything stopped pretending to be temporary. Time didn't fix anything. It just made the shape of the damage clearer. I see my biological family almost every week now. Dinners feel routine instead of ceremonial. Ryan complains about work. Claire vents about school. Laura texts me reminders about things I already know. David asks if I'm taking care of myself in that quiet, steady way that still surprises me. They treat me like I never left. Some days that comforts me. Other days, it terrifies me, because it means this life has solidified. It's no longer something I'm trying out. It's something I've stepped into fully, whether I admit that out loud or not. My parents, the ones who raised me, are still in my life, but they orbit farther out now. We talk, we check in, birthdays are acknowledged. Holidays are negotiated instead of assumed. My mom still calls me her daughter, but there's something careful about the way she says it now, like she's afraid the words might stop working if she doesn't handle them gently enough. She stopped asking about my schedule, stopped suggesting plans, stopped pushing for therapy or blended holidays. The effort drained out of her quietly. My dad is polite, kind, distant. The last time I visited, I noticed they'd moved some of my childhood photos into a smaller frame in the hallway instead of the living room. Not erased, just relocated. I didn't mention it. I don't think they did it consciously. That's the part that haunts me the most. No one slammed a door. No one cut contact. No one issued ultimatums. This wasn't abandonment. It was erosion. Sometimes I wake up convinced I made the honest choice, that choosing the life that feels real is the only way to survive without resenting everyone involved. Other nights, I lie awake replaying moments from my childhood, things that meant everything to me once, and wonder when they stopped being enough. I wonder if belonging is something you're born into, or something you earn by staying. I wonder if love can survive being compared. And I wonder, constantly, if the people who raised me lie awake too, asking themselves where they went wrong, even though they didn't. That's the thought I can't escape. No abuse, no neglect, no villains. Just a mistake made decades ago, and a series of choices I had to make without ever asking for them. Sometimes I think about the other woman, the one who grew up with my biological parents, the one living my almost life. I don't resent her. I don't envy her. But I do wonder if she feels whole in a way I never will. I have two families who love me, and somehow that feels lonelier than having just one. So that's where I am now, living a life that fits, while quietly grieving the one I dismantled to get here. I don't know if I chose the right people. I don't know if I chose myself, or just the version of me that felt easiest to keep. And I don't know if years from now, I'll look back on this as honesty, or as the moment I broke something that didn't deserve to be broken.